Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so you've sent us another source, and we're here to jump right in.
Yep, ready to pull out the key info, the interesting bits.
Think of us as your guides through this specific material. We're aiming to help you get informed on what's actually in this source you sent.
And today, that source is an excerpt from a transcript. It's from the YouTube channel Midas Touch.
Right, and our mission, as always, is just to unpack what's in this transcript excerpt.
Exactly. Focusing only on the information, the details, the claims presented right here, we're looking at how this source portrays recent public communications it attributes to Donald Trump.
And crucially, we're not adding anything from outside. No opinions, no taking sides, especially with politically charged stuff like this. We're just reporting what the source reports.
Yeah, and this one's interesting because it covers quite a few different things attributed to him. Weather comments, immigration talk, foreign policy stuff.
So yeah, it's a bit of a journey through different points, all based on what's in this specific transcript.
Okay, so where do we start? The source actually kicks off with something about the weather.
Yeah, it's linked to a public appearance described as a parade. The transcript reports claims attributed to Trump about this event.
Uh-huh. It says he mentioned that forecasters predicted rain, like a 100% chance of rain for it.
But then, according to this source's account of his comments, it didn't rain at all. He apparently called the weather beautiful.
Okay, but here's the connection the source highlights.
Right.
It reports Trump then used that specific outcome, no rain, despite the forecast, to sort of question bigger predictions, specifically climate change predictions.
Yeah, the source quotes him asking, like, how did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out?
Mm-hmm. And the source provides a fuller quote for context. Let me see.
Here. It didn't rain. Take a look. It didn't rain, so climate change must not be real because everybody said that it was 100% going to rain on my birthday, and it didn't rain. That's what you're going with here.
Wow. Okay, keep going.
What's this? It was a fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful, and so I asked if they gave it a 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night.
So what the source is really pointing out here is how a specific short-term weather forecast miss is being presented reportedly as a reason to doubt these huge, complex climate models.
Exactly. It kind of prompts you, the listener, to think about that leap, that connection being made in the reported statements.
Okay, so from weather, the source then shifts pretty significantly.
Yeah, a big chunk of this transcript excerpt gets into immigration and domestic policy rhetoric it attributes to Trump, mostly stuff from social media posts, it seems.
Right. The source, just reporting neutrally here, says these posts describe Trump stating he's directing IC agents.
That's Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Yeah, directing them to, quote, immediately go into all the Democratic power centers. And the goal stated in these posts, again, according to the source, is pretty stark. To achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history.
And the source specifies the areas targeted in these posts, these Democratic power centers.
Right. It lists America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside. That's the quote from the source regarding the posts.
Okay. And does the source mention why these areas are targeted? According to the post?
It does. It presents the reasons attributed in the source to Trump. It quotes him describing these as places where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens.
So that's the reported justification in the source for focusing on those cities.
Yeah. And the source adds more reported statements attributed to Trump about radical Democrats.
What kind of statements?
Things like, they're sick of mind, hate our country, actually want to destroy our inner cities, and that they believe in, quote, open borders transgender for everybody and men playing in women's sports.
Okay. So, a lot of strong language reported there.
And also a reported call for law enforcement, ICE, Border Patrol to focus on our crime-ridden, deadly inner cities and those places where sanctuary cities play such a big role.
Sanctuary cities. That term usually means cities limiting cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, right?
Generally, yes, though policies vary. But that's the term used in the reported statement within the source.
Now, interestingly, right after presenting all that, the source itself adds something.
It does. It throws in its own point, contrasting California's economic contribution, calling it a donor state, with what it calls red states, describing them as largely taker states.
Meaning contributing less federal tax versus receiving federal spending.
Right. But that comparison, that's explicitly presented by the source, Midas Touch, not attributed to Trump. It's their addition right there.
Got it. So this whole section, as presented by the source, really ties together immigration, specific cities, crime rhetoric, and political labels.
Yeah, it lays out that specific framing found in the reported statements.
Okay, and then the source brings in another element, something about recent violence.
Yes, it connects some of this reported rhetoric to a specific tragic event.
What event is that?
It reports on an incident in Minnesota where a right-wing extremist, described by the source as a Trump supporter, killed a Democratic state representative and her husband.
Oh, wow.
And also attempted to assassinate a Democratic state senator and his wife.
That's terrible. Does the source give more details?
It mentions the attacker reportedly had a list of other Democratic lawmakers and something called a no king sign.
Okay. And how does the source connect this to Trump's reported statements?
Well, it makes a specific factual claim about Trump's response, or lack thereof, to this specific event.
What's the claim?
The source states that, as of late the previous night, Trump had, quote, still not made a single freaking phone call to Minnesota Governor Walz to check in.
So the source is highlighting this reported lack of contact in the context of the violence and the preceding rhetoric it discussed.
Exactly. It presents that specific claim about the phone call within that broader context. We're just reporting that the source makes this claim.
Understood. Okay, let's shift gears again. The source also covers foreign policy and trade commentary.
It does. It touches on reported statements about trade deals first.
How so?
It describes Trump's reported approach as basically, all we have to do is send a letter and tell them how much they have to pay.
Is that a direct quote from the source's reporting?
Yes, the source quotes. We have our trade deals. All we have to do is send a letter. This is what you're going to have to pay. That's presented as the reported method for trade deals.
Okay. What else on foreign policy?
There's a comment reportedly made before the G7 summit.
The group of 7 nations.
Right. Regarding Iran and Israel, the source reports him saying, sometimes you have to just let people fight it out. The direct quote included is, sometimes they have to fight it out.
And anything else on conflicts?
Yeah, the Russia-Ukraine war. The transcript includes his reported comparison of that war to 2 young children fighting.
Like kids in a park.
Exactly. The source quotes him. Sometimes you see 2 young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other, and they're fighting in a park, and you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while. And it also reports a comment allegedly made to Putin, something like, they might have to keep fighting and suffering a lot.
Okay, quite the analogy reported there.
And interestingly, the source then contrasts this with a perspective reportedly offered by the German chancellor.
Oh, what was that?
As reported in the transcript, the chancellor is described as explaining to Trump the difference Ukraine targeting military sites versus Russia targeting civilians attempting genocide. The chancellor reportedly said, this is the difference.
So the source includes that counterpoint.
And it also reports on Trump's claims about brokering deals in the past.
Like which ones?
Getting India and Pakistan to make a deal, apparently using trade, and also addressing issues between Serbia and Kosovo, described in the source as going at it hot and heavy.
Okay, past diplomatic claims.
But then, on the India-Pakistan claim specifically, the source inserts its own counterclaim.
What does the source say?
It states that India disputes his involvement, that trade wasn't used, and the source adds its own assertion that he doesn't understand trade deficits.
Right. So again, that's the source adding that commentary, not part of the reported Trump statement itself.
Correct. That counterclaim comes directly from the source providing the transcript.
So this last section really shows the source collecting various reported statements on international relations, trade methods, conflict perspectives, past claims, highlighting a specific style of communication as reported by the source.
Exactly. So we've covered quite a range just based on this one transcript excerpt you sent.
Yeah, we started with the weather comments, reportedly linking a missed forecast to climate change doubts.
Move to the reported immigration rhetoric targeting specific cities, the reasons given, the language used.
Then the source connecting that to recent violence and making that claim about the lack of a phone call.
And finally, these reported comments on handling trade deals and international conflicts, plus the claims about past successes and the source's own counterclaims on those.
And just to underline it one more time, everything we discussed, pulled directly and only from this Midas Touch transcript excerpt you provided.
Our job here was just to guide you through it, neutrally presenting what the source itself reports, the statements, the actions, even its own counterclaims.
Right. So as you think about all this, maybe chew on this question. What does seeing this collection of topics presented together, whether immigration, violence context, foreign affairs as reported and arranged in the specific source, tell you about how political narratives are constructed and communicated today?
Or maybe think about it this way. How does encountering these different communication styles and subjects, all packed into one source, make you consider the way political information gets filtered, framed, and ultimately shared?
Lots to think about there. Thanks for sending us the source material.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.